hello, Xaque Gruber.
Hello, Ellen Fischer.
Welcome to the Center for the Spiritual Care and our Zoom pre-recorded conversation about your work today.
Thank you.
And all of this work concerns your late father.
Yes.
When did your father pass away?
It was May 2018.
2018, so that's almost 3 years now.
Yeah, right.
Does it seem like the time has flown past since that time?
I've definitely filled the time with many things, and you know, it is funny how 3 years goes by and it does feel like a blink. Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of wild. But of course, yeah, partly you've been occupied by making this body of work about I have been, and the body of work just started very organically, kind of missing my father, thinking about my father with a drawing, and then it grew from there, and all of a sudden I went, wait a minute, I think I have an art series expanding here, and which is very exciting.
Is the first drawing you did in this show? It
is in the show, and it is my father on the bicycle.
Okay, and we're going to be talking about that one later.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit more. I've seen a lot of red dots in here, and I guess that part of the proceeds are going to be going to a very special center.
Yes, so I'm giving a portion of the sales to the Fisher Center for Alzheimer's Research, which is in New York City. It's the #1 Alzheimer's research organization in the United States as far as money going to actual research. 95% of it does. And when my father died, I said in lieu of flowers, please give money to that, which turned out to be terrific. I want to do anything I can to try to help with Alzheimer's research and finding a treatment and a cure. Anything I can do, making a clock, whatever I can do. You know, it's important to me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this clock. It's called Tempus Fugit, and of course, we all know what that means, but it is also the name of the clock up here, which is very appropriate. And tell us about how did you come up with this clock?
Okay, so time is a theme that kind of runs throughout the show, and time is also a song by the Alan Parsons Project, which is from I think 1981 or 2. And that song, oh gosh, it makes me cry when I hear it. It reminds me so much of my growing up and my father, and it's so beautiful. I dare anyone to listen to Time by the Alan Parsons Project and not cry. It's very tear-jerking. And I thought I need to have a piece in the show that really is about time. I don't know what it was. It was like a magical voice in my head said, go to the Salvation Army and see what clocks they have for sale. So I went to the Salvation Army here in Vero Beach and poking around, they have so many unusual little things. And I found this clock, which wasn't working. And it was not that attractive, not that interesting, but functional and had a nice base.
Yes.
And I thought, ooh, I could kind of do something with this. So I took it to the clock wizard. He lives in Fort Pierce, which is just south of Vero Beach.
Oh.
And he tinkered with it and made it working beautifully.
Oh, wonderful.
And then I took it home and started putting almost like a garden on it. My father loved to garden. My last name is Gruber, which means one who digs in the ground. And my family, emblem on the crest, the official crest of the Gruber family, is a spade or a shovel. So I have a little shovel here on the side. I have birds and mushrooms and flowers and turtles for Vero Beach that are up here marching around. I have ivy and dragonflies and you name it. I had a really fun, good time making this thing. And then at the top is a ceramic angel cherub boy holding a songbird. And I thought that's just such a beautiful feel for what's on the top. And I'm mixing so many things here. Ceramics and artificial ivy and you name it, moss. I've got a metal-topped mushroom. And then the back is beautiful. The back has a secret door which opens up, and that's where the gears are. So
read that little legend that you taped on the outside.
I had to actually put that on the outside. It says, warning, do not adjust the time by turning the hands of the clock. To adjust the time, please use the small dial hidden in the back of the clock. That's behind the secret door. I made a garden door.
Yeah, outside, and yeah. It sort of speaks to more than just a mechanical.
And I also really enjoyed doing 3D. where the whole thing, you walk around and enjoy this sculptural piece.
It's really nice.
Which-
and I love this mission-style plant
Isn't
stand.
this
It's like
wonderful?
it all belongs together.
It does all belong, and I put it right smack dab in the middle of this gallery, because where else am I going to put it? I have to put it somewhere where people can walk around, and thank God everyone's been careful and not bumped into it. So.
Oh yeah, I don't think you could miss it, actually.
Okay.
Well, let's go to one that deals a little bit more directly with your father, and that one, which I have written down here, is the Nocturne, which is directly behind us on the door.
It is. Nocturne is, well, much of this show is mixed media. And what mixed media means, for anyone who doesn't know, is you're taking many different kinds of mediums. In my case with Nocturne, it's printmaking, it's painting and acrylic and found pieces. I do little watercolor birds that I like to put into all of my work. There's homemade paper, there's actual real bark. And then I was walking down the street where, this was in Hollywood, California, where Sunset and Vine intersect. And there was this mentally ill homeless man with these big paintings sprawled out on the sidewalk, and they were stunning. And I said, "What, you painted this?" He said, "Yes, I'll sell you one for $12. And I said, "Okay." And he said, "But you have to promise me you're going to do something with it. Please do something with it." And I said, "Could I use it in my own art, and cut it up and put it in there?" He said, "Yes, that's great." So the border around Nocturne is this mentally ill homeless man's artwork. It's that kind of fiery border of oranges and peaches. And I also used it in the piece here about Alice in Wonderland, the Tulgey Wood, which I think we might be talking about.
Yeah.
I tried to use it in several pieces. It became like this fantastic canvas pattern that I just wanted to.
And it also has this sort of sparkle, like on some movies, when they're entering another dimension, how the sort of electric rays go as they go through into that other dimension.
Yes.
So it's also as though we are going back in time, perhaps in a time machine.
It does, and it adds even more to the mixed media,
Now, one thing I'm going to ask you right here, because I'm going to keep asking it probably throughout the interview, is that most of the pictures that deal directly with your father, a picture of your dad or a stand-in for your dad, we don't see his face. We see him walking off into the woods here. We see a silhouette but no features, or we see just a blank face. What's that all about? I
decided I didn't want this to be a show about portraits of my father's face. And I feel honestly like it's much more universal if we see my father either in a silhouette or from the back or a side view. People will then go, "Oh, that reminds me of my brother, my father, my friend, or myself." They see themselves in pieces. I want people to kind of immerse themselves into it without seeing my father's actual facial features.
It's so interesting that when you were doing this, this is a very personal show and very personal art, and yet you were thinking of your audience from the start?
I was, because as a big fan of Joni Mitchell, she once said, when people hear my songs, I don't want them to think, what was Joni Mitchell doing when she wrote that? I want them to think about their own life. And I thought, yeah, that's how I want it to be. And with my art, I want people to look at it and reflect whatever is important for them or hurts in them or whatever it is that they're excited about. I don't want them to be just thinking about my experience making it.
Spoken like a true artist, I think.
Thank you.
Let's go into the next one, which is very large. It's the Spiritual Expedition of Life. It's on probably one of the larger walls in our Center for Spiritual Care.
I think of it as like a tapestry. It's this large piece that as I was making it, I had no idea how large it would become or what it would look like when it was done. I kept layering things on it and moving it around and chopping it up and repasting it together and restitching it. There's so much in this piece. There's so much detail that even I, as the person who made it, stares and finds new things. And I go, wait, I did that. Oh, that's so nice. There's a million little pieces. It's like a Hieronymus Bosch piece or something.
Yes, except a little happier, a little more
happier.
Upbeat. Yeah.
Or as one of my Facebook friends said, it's like Guernica but happy. You know Picasso's Guernica? For anyone out there who doesn't know, Google it. Guernica. Guernica. It's not a happy painting, but this is Guernica but happy. And I thought, wow, that's a really wonderful thing to say. There's many actual little starfish. Some are in the sky. There's Chagall angels and birds. There's printmaking. There's mixed, I love hiding puzzle pieces, jigsaw puzzle pieces throughout.
Yes.
Because I do feel like life is a puzzle and Alzheimer's is a riddle, and we have so many so many
and the
metaphors
pieces
here.
Are some of the pieces are missing, and how
Or
do you get
floating.
them back? Or floating.
Yeah, and you have to grab it and say, now where does this one go?
Now there's a lot of space in there given over to a moose. What does a moose have to do with your dad?
Okay, well this is actually a very fractured landscape of Maine.
Okay.
So I took Maine as kind of my setting for this, and I have lighthouses and I have the different Maine wildlife all in there. Lobsters kind of swimming underneath it.
Yes.
I have Kiss Me Once and Kiss Me Twice and Kiss Me Once Again. It's been a long, long time. That's an old 40s song, big band song. My father loved it, so I did that as the top and bottom. It's pieces of his life, but it's pieces of Maine and pieces of just life. I call it the spiritual expedition of life because it feels so spiritual. We're in the Center for Spiritual Care.
Right.
There's something really intangible about this piece. I have 2 birch trees that flank either side, and it's sort of this story, almost like a movie that's moving. And I love pointing things out to people because there are so many little hidden
A cinematic
gems.
quality.
It has a cinematic quality. It does. And Silent Night, which is an old Gruber family song from way back when, I found sheet music printed on ribbon that is running around the border.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I wondered, I saw it was cloth and I just couldn't figure it out. And now,
It's
now
ribbon.
I know. Yeah.
And I found the ribbon at the dollar store, which was such a find. And I went, what is this big giant Silent Night ribbon? Why is it in the dollar store? This should be in the expensive store. And I realized it was printed Silent Night, Holy Night, all is clam, all is bright. And I went, all is clam. I love that. It was like a defect one. But I like that it says all is clam because it's about Maine and we have clam chowders up there.
Of course.
Yeah, and I love fried clams.
It sort of all went together.
Yeah.
It all went together.
It's a new way to think of it.
And it's also interesting that, you put in things from your dad's life that, like the song that would have occurred before you were even born. So you were really...
200 years ago, yeah.
Well, not Silent Night, but I mean...
Kiss Me Once and Kiss Me Twice.
Yeah,
way before my time, yeah.
And as well as your ancestors' Silent Night song.
Right.
But one that I think might, actually 2 of them that I think might have a little bit of you in them, as well as your dad, is The Lake, which is right over here.
Yes, The Lake. This was, along with the bicycle one that we'll talk about, was the first one that I made that I realized I was doing a series. And I have this wonderful photo of my father in his boat. This was the very last time he ever drove his boat. He didn't know it at the time, but I certainly did. It was a very quietly emotional experience being the passenger in this boat that he was still able to captain back to the marina, which is quite a winding waterway. And he didn't really know where he was going, so thank God I was on the boat with him. But I decided just to take a picture of him with my cell phone and capture this moment that would be the final thing.
Yeah.
And I loved the photo, and so I was working from the photo, and I made the silhouette of his face, which is his silhouette. That's the one piece of him in the show that is him. And I look at that silhouette and it is eerie. It's so perfect.
It's so great that you decided to leave it as a silhouette.
And I did.
Yeah.
And I also like the texture of the paper. I love experimenting with watercolor paper. And so one thing I like to do, and I teach my students this too, is I crumple the watercolor paper and I run it under water, and it loosens up all of the elements in the paper. Fibers, and it sometimes cracks the paper, which can be great. And then I flatten it out, and then I work on this soft, now kind of cracked paper.
It's a bit of a nap, yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So the texture becomes something almost like burlap or something.
Right.
And then you're painting and drawing on it, and you have no idea what can happen. It's so much less boring than just a flat white piece of watercolor paper.
Because it's
And-
about the process.
And it's also, with Alzheimer's, there's so much, you feel like you're crumbling. You feel like you're being crunched. There's all sorts of physical to it, you know? I can't even find the word. It's just this
Yeah.
And the paper feeling all kind of bunched up and made
It's
like
more
that.
about feeling than expressing something in words. When you can actually feel the paper with your eyes, as you can in that one,
Yeah.
it gives you something that you really can't describe in words.
Yes, and it's full of torn paper, and I like that feeling of feeling torn with this particular piece. I kept the colors a little bit muted. I have Christopher Cross's song "Sailing" and the lyrics written kind of carefully, quietly in there, along with Alice in Wonderland poetry, and various little pieces.
The one that I say that you're in it too is that we know somebody is in the boat with him in the passenger seat right next door. I mean, that's what this is about. It's about riding along in the boat with someone else. So I think this is one of the ones, I guess, that I like best because I can place myself in the boat. I can place
I like
myself
that.
next to that person, and that's why I thought you were in there, because
am.
you would have taken the
I
picture.
I was.
Which you are.
Yeah, I was.
And the one on top has you in it too, but in a much different way, a dream-like way.
Yes.
And that one is called
His
The
boat-
Northern Island.
No, I've renamed it.
Oh, you did?
I
Oh, oh,
renamed it. It was called the Northern
Oh.
Island originally.
Okay.
But it's called His Boat, My Boat, and Our Island.
Much better title.
I felt it was important because I wanted to bring Dad into this show in every way I could. And the Northern Island, while it is lovely, His Boat, My Boat, and Our Island feels like a relationship. So that's one thing I wanted this show to feel like, a relationship. That's why I have all these captions of descriptions of the pieces around the room, so that people can, even if I'm not here to guide them around, can have a relationship with the
Didn't this
history.
one start with something your dad said about our island, or?
So basically, I was at home experimenting on Yupo paper, which is this kind of acetate watercolor paper.
Like
and
a vellum, sort of.
Sort of.
Yeah.
And it was invented for astronauts, of all things. I don't know what they were using it for, but watercolor artists got a hold of it. Yupo, Y-U-P-O for people out there. And anyway, it's so much fun to work with. And I'm making this beautiful sort of medieval village. And I thought, well, feels like an island. And then I thought, well, it's sort of like Denmark. And at that point, I hadn't even been to Denmark, but in my dreams. And then I thought, well, it also feels like Maine. Well, it also feels like fairy tales. Anyway, I just made this island, and my father loved it. He was actually alive while I painted that. And he said, that's our island. I said, yes, it is. So then I also later did a painting with these two dory boats, which are little fishing boats in Maine. And I decided the further away boat is me. And the closer boat, which has orange on it, is my father. And we're tethered to the rocks in the foreground with all these Maine shorebirds. And what this painting really is it's about 15 paintings that I cut up and put
Yes.
together in a new way, which is something I love to do. I take many paintings because I never throw away a painting. If I don't like it, I just cut out the piece that works. And then I say, I'm going to use this at a later date.
Right.
And it's very Native American. I like using all the pieces of the
All
buffalo.
of the buffalo, yeah.
Yes. All the bones, everything.
The hooves, the tail, everything.
I need to make it all work somewhere else. I have bins of cut up paintings, and I look at these pieces and I go, these could make great Christmas cards, these could make great whatever. I don't know. I'm going to do something with it all at some point.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very exciting. And to most people,
Yeah.
it would look like a mess. But I make it come together. And
Well, as you did with these two, I mean, they're very specific, and even though this is a fantasy place, it's a very specific subject and focus, but it came together out of all these different elements.
it did.
The one about the expedition of life, though, is you just get lost in it. It's
You
like,
do.
it's
And like
getting in
life.
and getting, yeah. You can get sidetracked. Or, oh, let's go over here. Let's go over there.
And it is an expedition.
There's no one single focus in there.
I like
as
that.
There is in your other
I
paintings.
kind of like that. It's like a mural.
It's like a mural, yeah,
Yeah,
because it's long too, and you have to look at only one part at a time.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about, the one we've been waiting to talk about is Our Time on This Planet, which contains the original drawing of your dad on a bike. And this was his last bike ride as well?
It was his last bike ride. He was super able-bodied, but the brain was going, you know, as it is with Alzheimer's. He couldn't navigate his way, so I would bike behind him, and I would be trying to help him avert disaster. But at a certain point, you don't want to be worried about constant looming disaster. So this was probably the last time that he rode on his bicycle. This was on A1A on the island here in Vero Beach. And I took a photo with my cell phone as he was bicycling, thinking this is probably the last one.
Yeah.
And I loved the shadow that I caught of him down on the bottom. And when I looked at the photo, I thought, I'm going to draw this. And this was another one that I crumpled up the paper, running it underwater, it cracked, and then I worked on that rough surface. And then when I was done with it, it was this narrow vertical drawing. And I thought, well, this is nice in and of itself, but I want more. I see this as something bigger. So I took the drawing to a local copy shop. They reproduced it twice, and then I was playing around with the 3 of them. And I really love trilogies, and I love triptychs. And so I thought maybe I can work with 3 images. And I went over the other 2 with watercolor and pencil and some pastel. And I found this arrangement that I really loved with the circles repeated of the wheels. I had these old maps of the universe that I also had reproduced, and I bought multiple maps, and I made them around him almost like this. Oh, there's so many things you could read into this, with time, with eternity, with our universe, with halos around him.
Exactly.
I like all these repeated circles and shapes, and in the corners of the piece are these little beautiful purple flowers, which are a kind of wild iris, and it's called a blue-eyed grass.
Okay.
And what happens with blue-eyed grass is at night, a bloom comes. They bloom at night, and then it falls 24 hours later to make way for a new bloom.
Oh my.
And I thought, I love that as a metaphor.
Yes.
So I used the blue-eyed grass and the old clocks, again, this kind of repeated theme of clocks, and the universe, the wheels turning, and all of it just felt like this is our short time on this planet to me. It's about time and space. It's about much more than just my father. And I love the way it came together visually on there.
And it's also using a symmetrical format, which is, I think, unique in this particular show, and maybe in your work.
It feels mathematical.
It feels religious. I mean, if you think of an altar, everything's always, there's 2 candles, and there's a
and then
thing
the
in the
central
middle,
one,
and then there's and so it has almost, I won't say religious feeling, but a feeling like you're in church a little bit.
I really liked hearing that. It also feels like a Japanese folding screen in a way, in a modern way. And
I think the idea of motion is suggested by the 3 different figures. I remember when it was just the long, narrow drawing, and I thought you'd used, the composition very successfully in there. But when you have tripled it, it has a feeling of motion, of something moving, and moving actually away from you. But that's what they say in the universe too. Everything's moving away from everything else, and so there's a lot of metaphors in there. I think.
Don't always work this large either. This is a very large piece. It's, I think, 4 or 5 feet long by 4 feet high, maybe
That's
3 or 4 feet high.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, and it was exciting to work that large. It's also a little bit scary because you're thinking, oh gosh, I have to frame this piece. It's going to be a fortune. And you're also thinking, where am I going to exhibit this giant piece? And you're also thinking, oh, if it doesn't sell, I have to store this giant piece.
No,
I don't know. So
there's
all these thoughts going on in your head.
You always hang your favorite ones at home if they don't sell.
I'm going to hang that above my couch.
It's really beautiful.
Perhaps. Thank you.
I remember, when I interviewed you this time last year.
Was it?
Yes, and you showed this to me, and it was just about in its final form. You were still working on it.
I was, and it was just on paper at that point. It wasn't framed on the
it
wall.
wasn't mounted or anything like that.
It was loose and it was big.
Yeah. Well, I think it looked well, and certainly they have a wonderful wall here to display it.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think that from here we'll go to a painting that's adjacent to it called American Explorer.
Oh, yeah.
And that is one of the more intriguing pieces in the show, I think, for many people.
Yes. American Explorer, I wanted to do a kind of Norman Rockwell mid-century traditional watercolor of my father in his canoe in this kind of almost like Boy Scout uniform with his fishing hat, fishing in this solitary, beautiful scene on a lake with ducks and loons and the pole in the water and the reflections. And when I was working on this, the top like 20% of the piece felt beautiful but bare. And I thought, okay, what can I put up there that will fill that space? And I thought, well, I know, it's the perfect dimensions of a magazine cover. I'm going to create a magazine, a fake magazine title up there. And I thought, what will it be? Well, American Explorer. And I just made it up. I found the letters, I put them up there. And I remember posting this on Facebook, and all these people wrote me congratulating me for making the cover of American Explorer. And I thought, oh my gosh, they think this is a real magazine? I never said it was a real magazine.
And didn't you hear from somebody who said, I used to get that?
And I love that magazine. I've been getting that for years.
Yeah.
And I thought, what are they confusing this with? Or maybe I don't know, maybe there's an alternate reality going on.
Yeah.
So I got very, I felt very validated by that though, because I thought, wow, this really looks real. If this looks real enough to people that they think it's a real magazine, well, I made it up, folks. And I made it up not to fool you, but because I was trying to express something about my father's life here. And I even put on the bottom underneath the title, premiere issue December 1941, which was the month he was born. And then I wrote American Explorer, the magazine for the wild at heart, 25 cents. I did research, and that's the price.
Yeah, the price was on there. I thought that was a very nice touch.
Thank you.
Which all that came after, of course, your idea to put a title on it and make it
I did, because I thought I'm going to have a little fun with this.
I love it how, again, you have your father paddling away from us. He's every man again.
Yes.
Going out into the stream.
Yes. And then the wonderful thing is, on my opening day of this exhibit, my father's brother wrote me. He couldn't be here, he's in Georgia, and he bought it.
Oh, fabulous.
And I thought, oh my gosh.
Oh, that is fabulous.
We're going to keep it in the family.
That's a good ending to that story, yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I think you should do more work like that.
Oh, good, okay.
I mean, maybe I shouldn't tell you to do it because this was so serendipitous. It just
When you
sort
say
of
work
clicked.
like that, do you mean like invent your own magazines?
Invent your own magazines.
I love that.
I mean,
I could do a whole show of invented
Yeah,
magazines of different
portraits
things.
of people who maybe refer to somebody in your life, but can be every woman or every man
I think that's
or every
fantastic.
child or whatever.
I think that is great.
Because you have a very
It ties in with a kind of a graphic nature that I'm really
Yes,
drawn to,
yes.
and an illustration vibe that I really love.
yes, and books, the promise of words or stories inside that we
Yes.
can only imagine. So I think it hits a lot of your
And I love
a lot
telling
of the
stories.
cylinders that you have going there.
Yes, many cylinders.
Many cylinders, at least. Well, let's see. I think nowadays there's only 3 in a car, but I think you're a V8.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Isn't that a vegetable drink?
No, they had a V8 engine. That
Oh,
had
okay,
8
okay, yeah.
My mother had a car, a Chrysler, with 8 cylinders. I mean, they don't do that.
No.
I mean, I don't even know if race cars have that many anymore.
Right.
I mean, that was just like American power back
Wow.
in the 1970s and 60s.
You know so much about cars.
No, just about the ones my mom drove.
Oh, okay.
She named all of them Betsy.
my
Okay, now
gosh,
the
that's
next
funny.
one we're going to look at is ghost language. Another probably one of the more interesting.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay.
Ghost language is the only piece in the show that I think is just these sort of non-colors, grays, blacks, and white. It's an old piece of slate, which I think must have been a roof shingle
Looks
or
like.
tile that I found. It had a wonderful kind of cracked edge, and I imagined piecing it together, showing, I really wanted a piece in this show that was going to express how language is the first thing that disappears from your brain with Alzheimer's disease. When you go to see a neurologist, if you believe you may have Alzheimer's disease or dementia, they show you a flashcard deck of about 25 cards with basic images on it. It might have a beaver, it might have a lemon, it might have a cake, and you have to name those things. Well, language is the first thing to disappear. If you have Alzheimer's disease, the words don't form. So in this piece, the person's trying to say, I love you, nothing's coming out. The other person looks like he or she, I kept the genders ambiguous. This is not necessarily my father, but this is something that I'm doing to express the experience. I'm using tiles at the bottom that say ghost language, except there's no T in ghost. Instead, I used an X because the letter X is not just the first letter of my name, but it's a letter that stands for Christ, it stands for transformation, it stands for many things to many people. It's an enigmatic letter, and it's also the most unusual letter in the alphabet. Fewest words start with X. And I have a piece of chalk hanging from a piece of sinew, and I drilled the holes, and I decided to kind of carve into the slate in places. My name is actually carved, you have to sign your name on each piece of artwork. My name is carved into the bottom, very small. So I love the way this came together.
Yeah, it's a sculptural, I mean, all of your pieces are sculptural in that they're like relief sculptures, but this one is a standalone. It's not in a frame, it's not glazed, it's just right out there at you. And I didn't understand all the implications behind it when I first looked at it. And in a way, it's one of the more poignant works in the show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think so too, and I like that it's stone.
Yes, the slate. The
Slate,
the
slate, rock,
tabula
stone.
rasa.
It is.
The blank slate,
the
blank speech bubble.
And there's a natural black that's running through it, which I didn't do.
Yes.
And I just loved that. So I'm working with all the natural elements.
I like that particular medium. And that's probably a good place for us to stop now, because that sort of says everything really in a nutshell.
You're such a good interviewer, Ellen. This has been such a joy, everybody.
Well, this is wonderful. Thanks again for tuning in to the Center for Spiritual Care's Art Talks with Xaque Gruber and Ellen Fischer. And come by the center and see what's next.
Yes, please do. And my website is xaqegruber.com, which is my name, XaqueGruber.com. You can see my art on there and find me and communicate with me. And thank you. Mwah.
Thanks
Blessings.
Again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. How's that?